and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Welcome in to the Mind, Body, and Spirit Radio Show on this Wednesday evening. It is my birthday month, that's why I'm singing. April. It is April the 5th, 2017. Welcome in, everyone, to our show tonight.
He will celebrate all month long.
And I might just start celebrating next month, too, just because. But continue the celebration up until go through next month, because I always celebrate the month of April. So why not just extend this? Let's just live like let's carpe diem. Let's just carpe diem. Carpe diem.
Oh yeah.
Carpe diem.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, live life to the fullest. Exactly. All right. So tonight, Featherlight, how are you doing?
Splendid.
Splendid?
Splendid. Yes. Namaste. How are you?
Namaste. Namaste.
I already know.
Very well. Very well. Yeah. Doing really good since it's my birthday. Oh, yeah. I'll start out singing. Gotta keep it bright and light and happy, joyful. Calm.
Singing lifts one's mood.
Yes, singing and dancing. Singing and dancing lifts the mood. So today is the day after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Prince of Peace, drum major for justice, was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, my hometown. Oh, my God. Oh, Lord, you know it's bad when you can come to Memphis. You go all over the world, and then you come to Memphis and get killed. Lord have mercy. But so Dr. King, of course, some people may already know, he came to Memphis for the sanitation worker strike because of the mistreatment of the sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. There was a man, I cannot call his name right now, but he was killed, crushed in the garbage truck because the black sanitation workers were not allowed to come inside and eat their lunch or anything like that. They had to sit outside. They weren't allowed to come in, even though they were working just as hard as everybody else or harder. So he was crushed in the back of the sanitation truck, the waste truck, and he was standing inside the truck eating his lunch, mind you, because it was raining. So no one even had sympathy enough or empathy for these people to say, come on in and at least eat your lunch so the rain won't soak your sandwich, your bowl of beans. So he was eating his lunch and he was crushed in the garbage truck. And so people made an appeal to Dr. King to come help organize the sanitation workers. You know, Dr. King was fighting for the poor people, and he began to change his thinking and philosophy. His speeches became a little more focused on the economy, and he had given the speech about the Vietnam War, how he opposed the Vietnam War, and the speech on silence. It's not an option. So King became more of a target at this point in 1968. And so he was in Memphis, and he was at the Lorraine Motel. And, many people have come out with evidence stating that the people on the balcony were involved or knew about the assassination. And, I never really thought about it until I became older, and kept seeing the pictures so many times of, Jesse Jackson and all of them on the balcony. What was his name? What's that reverend's name? Because there's even a video recorder, a video recording of him saying, and I stepped away. Billy Cowles, that's right, because we used to attend his church. We were members of his church right there on South Parkway. Anybody know Memphis, South Parkway and East Parkway, South Parkway and Kerr, right there in the heart of South Memphis. So Reverend Billy Cowles' church was located there. And there's a recording of him actually saying, and I stepped to the side so that they could get a better shot. So, oh, yeah. So some people say, when you get senile, you start running your mouth too much when you get old.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, that could very well be a possibility. We're not sure.
And there was also a book with the woman who was the operator at the hotel, and she stated, these are her words, she stated that she overheard a person on another line, because back in those days they could hear everything.
Oh, yes.
Right. So she said that she heard somebody say, get that nigger out on the balcony. And that lady came up missing or dead later.
Being from Memphis, we used to hear so many different stories about what happened that day and afterwards. Like the black firemen were given that day off because I think that's the number 2 fire station, which right now that's Front Street. I believe that's on Front Street right now, number 2. But I think it was a different street or something. But that fire department, from the back, I believe you could actually see the Lorraine Motel. It's like very close. Right. Because it was next door to where, what's his name? James L. Ray was supposedly had gone to that building right next door. Because, that building has now been annexed as part of the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis.
Wow.
So, but, yeah, we used to hear all kinds of stories and whispers back then. And you even used to live next door to one of the sanitation workers, Featherlight, that actually became one of the union members.
Right, I did. Now, back when I was growing up in the 60s, if your father worked for the sanitation department, which back then they called them, forgive me, garbage men. I mean, he was the lowest person on the totem pole, and everybody made fun of him because they made like maybe $2 an hour, and it was just a pitiful job. And when everybody did the dozens, they would say, "Your dad is a garbage man," ha, ha, ha. And then somebody else would say, "Your daddy beat you," ha, ha, ha. So that was the joke.
You guys were so cruel, just cruel.
But we were friends when it was over with. It was better than beating each other up and knocking each other upside the head with guns and knives like they do now, which we didn't carry. But anyway, this guy, he was a neighborhood drunk. His name was Mr. Rogers. He was a neighborhood drunk, and nobody had any respect for him. And it was just pitiful. Now, later on, we grew up, we moved out of the project, and I heard that Mr. Rogers had cleaned himself up, and he was with the union. Mr. Rogers worked himself up to be the head of the AFL-CIO Teamsters, was the Teamsters Union, and he was the one that was in charge of inviting Martin Luther King to Memphis and to come and help them. Those are my ties with Mr. Rogers, and he was our next door neighbor, and his son could dance, and I could dance, and our fathers used to put us together and make us dance up against, dance against each other. And
like a dance competition.
That was, like a little dance off, just him and me.
Fun.
And Mr. Rogers went from being the neighborhood drunk moving himself up to be the chairman, the head of the group that was trying to get help for these sanitation engineers, they call them now. But I remember that. And you can just imagine what that did to a person who had a job like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Having to be ridiculed and you know, really that's a decent job, an occupation. At least you have an occupation. You were able to obtain that. So.
Right.
But Dr. King was assassinated April 4th, in 1968, the Prince of Peace. And apropos of Dr. King, we are going to have, just before I say that, and you know, normally, well, I would say a few years ago, rather, we would hear all of this promotion of a day of service on April 4th. It was always a day of, there was this big push at one time for a day of service.
Right,
I remember even when President Obama was running for office the first time in 2008, the day of service was still quite popular. And somehow it just, the popularity of it seems to have diminished, because I didn't really hear much talk about the service day, April 4th, anything like that. Primarily what I heard about was Equal Pay Day, which I thought was quite interesting. Equal Pay Day.
Pay Day.
Yeah, Equal Pay Day. So I thought that was quite interesting, that there was like a lack of any kind of major promotion for that day.
The proven
Dr.
choice,
King.
media promotion, that's who we get it from.
Yeah, well.
Arm of the media.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Tonight, I'm so looking forward to this show and this guest, because our guest tonight is going to share some information that has been well researched. I think in one of his books, he has like 190-something footnotes, like 191 endnotes in his book, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence Murderous Targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. So our guest tonight is John Potash, and he is going to talk about, if you do not have this book or one of these books or DVDs, this first one, FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, and then also the FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders DVD. You need to get that. And Drugs Used as Weapons Against Us. The CIA Murderous Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. So
it is amazing. It is so much information. It is so much information, and I consider myself, I'm just open-minded. I'm just not shocked by a lot. But I mean, my mouth was just like, what? You know, oh my goodness, there's so much information, and so many people that we respect, like Pam Africa, writing the forward.
And Fred Hampton Jr. Also contributed to, let me see which one was it, the afterword. Fred Hampton Jr. Contributed the afterword to the FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders. Anybody that knows me know I love me some Tupac. I love Tupac, absolutely love Tupac. I can tell you exactly what I was doing when it was announced on the radio when Tupac finally died, after I think it was 6 days of being in the hospital after he was shot. I was in the nail shop, and it was, I believe that was like a Thursday or Friday, but I was in the nail salon, and we were sitting down. It was full, of course, so that's why I'm thinking it was like a Thursday or Friday, and the music was playing, And when the radio announcer came on and announced that, when I tell you the people jumped up and hit the floor, I mean, I think some of us walked out and said, I don't even want to get my nails done anymore. We were depressed. Yeah. That's how we felt. Because for us, Tupac was our Dr. King. I was born in 71, same year as Tupac. Tupac was our Dr. King. He was our JFK. He was our Elvis. He was our Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
So he was our Paul Robeson. And so we want to welcome in John Potash. John Potash, let me get your mic open here.
Thanks so much for having me on, Sister Featherlight and Sister Black Rose.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time. Hey. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight.
Of course.
Yes, and you know, I have your DVD. I need to order. I think it's the book, the Drugs Used as a Weapon Against Us. I need to order your book, and I will.
It's actually called Drugs as Weapons Against Us. Yeah.
Drugs as Weapons Against Us.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, go ahead, Featherlight.
This is Featherlight. John, I have the FBI War on Tupac and Black Leaders. I have that.
Great. Thank you.
With the forward by Pan Africa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The most informative and enlightening forward I have ever come across in my life.
I love Pan Africa.
Pam's great.
It's like getting an extra bonus.
Mm.
Good.
It is magnificent.
Well, but John, before we get into some information in the book, because it's just so much. I mean, you've just done a brilliant job of research, and I'll tell you, oh God, I love research. I absolutely love research. I love documentaries, and everyone talks about how well researched your material is. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write your first book?
Sure. Well, I work as a counselor, and I started as a drug and alcohol counselor, and then went to grad school for counseling in a number of different areas. And but in the meantime, most of my adult life I've done activism in different ways. Social activism, and but I've also done a lot of writing, and so I feel like I had, when I was researching, I was working as a counselor in Baltimore City as an addictions counselor, and one of the people I was counseling said my father was a Black Panther killed by the police, and I ended up using him as a character in something I was writing, just a short story I was writing on a novel actually. It turned into a novel, and so he had me researching the Black Panthers. And my grandfather actually had represented some Black Panthers in New York, and so I was, very supportive of the Black Panthers. And so when I read all about the Shakurs, and then I saw that there was foul play in Tupac Shakur's life, I thought that they must be targeting him like they're targeting his Black Panther leader parents in New York, and called his New York trial lawyer and said, I think there's a COINTELPRO targeting of him like his parents. What do you think? He said yes, and no one's writing about it. So he gave me an hour or two interview, and I said I was going to turn into an article for one of the national activist magazines. And I did, but at that time, the activist magazines were so brainwashed. A lot of them were, controlled by white activists who meant well, but they just didn't realize how Tupac was, an activist musician and leader, and they just, believed all the hype that he was, doing a lot of negative stuff. And so I just published a local article in Washington D.C., where I was living at the time. And then by the time after Tupac's death, they finally published a magazine called Covert Action Quarterly, which was started by a CIA whistleblower named Phil Agee, published a 50 endnote article that I wrote about the FBI counterintelligence targeting of Tupac and other black leaders and his Black Panther family at that time. And then when I published that, a lot of Tupac's mentors convinced me to turn into a book, because they said, no one else, is writing this angle of Tupac's life. You got to turn it into a book. So his business manager, former Black Panther Watani Tayahimba, was the most encouraging in that regard. But Michael Warren is activist lawyer in New York, also was very encouraging about that, as was Chokwe Lumumba, his national lawyer, who was head of the New African Peoples Organization. And so it took a long time. Kathleen Cleaver had recommended me to her editor, for an editor who was working on Eldridge Cleaver's memoirs, and that editor ended up getting fired. And we both our projects went were like tossed aside. But that was an editor working with St. Martin's Press, and but finally I got it out there in 2007. And in the meantime, though, I had also been working on two other projects: a novel based on the book Drugs as Weapons Against Us, and the nonfiction version of Drugs as Weapons Against Us. And so finally, in May of 2015, I put out the book, the nonfiction book Drugs as Weapons Against Us: the CIA's murders targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lanning, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists. So, but the book, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, was originally actually a tangent of the second book, but it became just a huge focus of mine, obviously. And I spent from 2007 to 2014 or 15 really trying to just get the word out about that book and the DVD, the film. And it's hard to break the mainstream media censorship, but I feel like it's gotten out there a lot, so a lot of people are really are really clued into it all finally.
Oh, certainly. I've been listening to your many interviews online, and one interview that I listened to, I think you mentioned that when you first tried to have an article published, you were somehow blocked initially from having the first article published. You had experience some difficulty.
Yeah, well, a lot of white progressive magazines just wouldn't touch the subject for a long time. One of my favorite magazines at the time was Z Magazine. Covert Action Quarterly was my favorite, so I was really glad to get published in there. But Z Magazine I liked a lot too, and I published other activist articles in Z Magazine in 2000. When was that? I'm sorry, in 1995 and 6. I think it was 1996 and 7. But they wouldn't publish the article on Tupac. And so I didn't get the article on Tupac published in Z until about 2013. It was a shame. It's just I guess there's just too many negative influences on some of these magazines in terms of the foundations that give money, or just other, just all the mainstream media crap and hype, and just people saying negative things that it just takes a while to convince some people what's really what was really happening.
Yeah, it does take a while. I think, what we call it, some people just have this mental block, and any information, some information like this, there's just this blockage. There's just you can't permeate this. You can't. No, I don't want to hear that. I don't believe it. I won't even research it. I won't even try to prove that you're wrong. I don't even want to try to prove you're wrong. I just don't want to believe it.
Yeah, there's a big racial divide, too. The white community just had a hard time understanding for a while what Tupac was all about, and that he was only pretending to be this gangster in order to appeal to gangs and politicize them. They couldn't either grasp that or didn't understand it or whatever. And but I think the black community, even if not knowing that in particular, just knew that there was this huge activist side to Tupac, and knew that his Black Panther heritage was, just a sign of how important he was, how driven he was, and how, how of course, U.S. intelligence would set up his murder, would assassinate him for his work.
Definitely, because when we would listen to Tupac, not even, I shouldn't even say, I still listen to Tupac, but just when you listen to his lyrics, actually listen to, you can hear how he was politicized, and you hear the activism in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
You can hear it. Now, I want to get to Drugs as Weapons Against Us, because the cover of this book, oh my God, you have on here, of course, one of my favorites. And people that know me, I'm always saying one of my favorites, but I have a lot of favorites.
Sorry.
And John, you may just become one of my favorites, but I have a favorite. Paul Robeson, Huey P. Newton, of course, Tupac, and his beautiful mother, Afeni Shakur. Jimi Hendrix, who I love. My uncle used to play Jimi Hendrix all the time on his radio reel. And so that's how I became a fan of Jimi Hendrix, because I grew up listening to Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. You have Fred Hampton on here, Patrice Lumumba, Che Guevara, Bob Marley, Janis Joplin, Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen, Kurt Cobain. And I need to watch, there are like 3 different like documentaries on Kurt Cobain on Netflix, and I've started watching one because I remember when Kurt Cobain quote unquote committed suicide.
There's only one documentary to watch. There's only one documentary to watch on Kurt Cobain.
Which one is that?
Soaked in Bleach.
Okay, Soaked in Bleach. Okay, yeah, I've seen that title. I don't know if that's
the only one to watch, because that's the one that shows definitively how he was murdered.
Okay.
Now it doesn't have the answer, but it shows that there was, it was just so, it's just completely filled with evidence of his murder and the police foul play around his murder.
Yeah, even though like I wasn't a big fan of Nirvana, I knew Nirvana was hot and popular. I knew about the group. I knew that Kurt Cobain, I knew something it was about him. I knew he was cool. I knew that much. And
yeah, he was a radical leftist also.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I knew he was down. So when it was reported that he committed suicide and all of this stuff with Courtney Love, I said, something just don't sound right about that. But I never really looked into what happened with Kurt Cobain. So if we don't get to him tonight, I hope that you can come back and we can just like really go deep into some more people. Okay, great. And you also have, let's see, Mamiya. You talk about Mamiya, John Lennon. Of course, there's always been mystery around him and his death.
Yeah. Right.
Now, Paul Robeson, though, was one of the most incredible men in history. I mean, he could speak 20 languages. Mm-hmm. He graduated from Columbia Law School at a time when I'm even shocked that their racism even let blacks into Columbia Law School. These Ivy League schools were so incredibly racist back then, and this must have been the 1920s or 30s. And so he was just the most amazing man around. I mean, he was an incredible singer, incredible athlete, All-American football player and lacrosse player. He just could do anything. He was just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing man. And he was a great activist and incredible humanitarian. Mm-hmm. And what they did to him is absolutely horrific, just dosing him with either LSD or BZ, like a super psychedelic, again and again, until they convinced him, that he was losing his mind or whatever. But then they committed him to a mental health hospital and gave him loads of electric shock treatments at higher doses than you're supposed to, and hurt his mind. And he just didn't want to be remembered that way, so he put himself in seclusion. But
how were they able to get it to him, John?
They just kept slipping it in his drink. They had they had undercover agents just kept putting it in his drinks. His son, Paul Robeson Jr., great activist in his own right, heard that his father had was being driven crazy by this dosing of his drinks. He says Dad told him there was these Americans in Moscow, where at the hotel you're staying at, and these were right-wing Americans who were just threw a party in the room adjoining his, and just kept trying to convince him to just come on over for a minute and have a drink. And he just comes over for a moment, and they slip something in his drink without him knowing, and he thought he was losing his mind because no one knew about psychedelics back then, and that's an MK Ultra drug. It's a CIA program. MK Ultra to use drugs is what they call their documents there is unconventional warfare, and their targets were anyone who opposed their right-wing racist agenda. And they say unconventional warfare. You think of the battlefield, but you don't realize that the battlefield includes anywhere in America for any dissenters who oppose their agenda. And so plenty of activists were major targets, but one of the first biggest target was Paul Robeson. Other targets, of course, were Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Kwame Nkrumah of Africa. I think he was leader of Kenya at the time, or was it Egypt? I'm sorry.
Ghana.
Patrice Lumumba, yeah, right. Sorry, Ghana. Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. The head of MK Ultra targeted him with poison and toothpaste. They just had
it goes on and on.
Yeah, it goes on and on. But the hit list, ABC News came out with this hit list of all these leaders to be dosed with psychedelics to mess up their minds, and so they start, in the United States, though, in terms of domestic targets, they started with Robeson. They also had targeted a scientist who was trying to get out of the whole program named Frank Olson, and they killed him. They dosed him, and then they murdered him. But Robeson, they kept, they ruined his mind. They tried to dose his son, and so Paul Robeson Jr. got dosed, but didn't drink a lot of the drink, thankfully, and saved his mind, and watched his drinks thereafter. But it was just horrific what they were doing, and then they moved on to other leaders, but more importantly, they targeted musicians. And my book documents how what they did is they manipulated these musicians into trying and using these drugs. But then when these musicians inadvertently promoted these drugs, but then when they caught on to what was going on, or at least sobered up and got more into activism, they did these musicians in. And you can see this happen with a number of these musicians. But Jimi Hendrix was just one of a number of examples. Jimi Hendrix was, of course, the top guitarist in the world, by most consider, and but the racism in the United States didn't allow him to become a superstar in the United States. So he went over to Britain, where he was instantly recognized as a genius, and came huge over in Britain. And because he got so big so fast, he couldn't handle his fame. This guy named Mike Jeffrey was able to insert himself into Jimi Hendrix's career because he had so many connections and could, get him booked at all these different places to handle, his that huge fame. And it turns out Mike Jeffrey was part of British MI6, which was, the British version of CIA. And so Jeffrey proceeded to sabotage Hendrix anytime he tried to do any kind of activist benefit. And Jimi Hendrix was, tried to do anti-war benefits and got sabotaged. Hendrix, according to Hendrix's fiancée Monica Danneman in her book, she says that Jimi told her that he believes that Mike Jeffrey planted drugs on him in an airport and got him arrested for that. And then the press just pretended like Jimi Hendrix was tripping up a storm and wrote his album, Are You Experienced, based on, acid, when really he wrote, all the top biographers of Hendrix say Are You Experienced was written, before he ever tried acid, and was written on no drugs, and that was his classic album. And Purple Haze was based on Hopi Indian folklore and myth, because he's part Indian, American Indian, Jimi Hendrix. And so it was just the acid named itself Purple Haze after the song. But Jimi Hendrix, then after MLK was assassinated, Jimi Hendrix started getting more radical and started supporting the Black Panthers, and dedicated his last album to the Black Panthers and talked about them in interviews. And when he fired Mike Jeffrey, within 48 hours of firing Mike Jeffrey, Jimi Hendrix was, died. And so, so the a roadie for Jimi Hendrix said that Mike Jeffrey, and he came out with a book saying this in print with about 3 or 4 years ago, this guy named James Tappy Wright, said that Mike Jeffrey admitted to him when he was drunk that he, had Hendrix killed. And so how does someone, of course, have someone else killed within 48 hours? And, of course, only if you're, connected to British or U.S. intelligence can you do that. But so all the evidence is there of how, how Jimi Hendrix was actually murdered and smeared to pretend like he died of of some kind of heroin overdose or drug-related thing. And they smeared him to say, he loved acid and, and promoted acid through him and all that stuff. But,
because, the story around Jimi Hendrix was always that he died because he suffocated on his own vomit. That's what we always heard.
That's what we're always told, but the evidence is very murky. They don't know exactly why he died, but they know, but all the evidence points to a lot of foul play, that, he was actually, killed through various means and for example, they didn't interview the paramedics who supposedly came to him, were first to come to him when they came to the hospital. He was supposed to be considered dead when he got there, but they supposedly worked on him for an hour after he got there. There's just so much foul play around his situation, and so much cover up around his death. But the point is, it was known that he was sobering up. And the only, just smoked a little weed and drank a bit, and that was it. In the last year of his life, according to his fiancée, he definitely pushed away all other drugs, and he was starting all kinds of activist, campaigns, anti-war, projects that he wanted to get his friend Bob Dylan involved with. Right. And so it's very sad, to lose such a great, incredible musician and great activist and great person.
A great person. So very similar to Tupac Shakur. Tupac, from my understanding, he had become like clean and sober. He wasn't promoting any type of weed smoking or drugs, anything, right before he too was assassinated. Yeah. So it's like these people decide to become more active, or become active in Jimi Hendrix's case, and then they are suddenly neutralized with these constant tactics.
Yeah. The difference between Tupac and Jimi Hendrix is that Tupac was a lifelong revolutionary because, growing up, in that Shakur household, Afeni Shakur was a one-time leader of the Harlem Black Panthers, and she called Tupac her revolutionary black prince when he was born. So she raised him as her black prince of the revolution, she called him. And so, even when he was 13 years old, Reverend Herbert Daltrey in New York asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up, with other kids? And he said, a revolutionary. And so, and he stayed with him all his life. Now, the only difference with him, of course, is that he only pretended to be a gangster in order to appeal to gangs and politicize them as part of his extended Black Panther family's movement to get the Bloods and Crips to call peace between each other and turn on to activism. And that was working across Los Angeles, and across California, and then across the country. And Tupac was helping make that work by getting Bloods and Crips leaders to come together and shake hands at Peace Truce picnics, and inspiring different Bloods and Crips leaders throughout the country to do that. So Tupac was already a national black leader, though, before he became a rapper. So, of course, the counterintelligence program that targeted national black leaders was going to target him. Now, everyone says, but the counterintelligence program was stopped in 1971. But former COINTELPRO agents like M. Wesley Swearingen say that the program continued just under different names after 71, at least up until the 90s. And so of course, once Tupac added wealth and fame and influence, national influence, really international influence, to his radical Black Panther leadership, as he was actually head of the New African Panthers in 8 cities. he added that theme of the music, and of course they were going to be targeting him more and more, and they just added more sophistication to the way they targeted him, as his wealth and fame, in direct proportion to his increased wealth and fame with each album and with each movie he did. So in the end of his life, though, Russell Simmons said that he saw Tupac at a party, with a bunch of rappers, and everyone else was smoking weed and drinking, and all Tupac would do is dance for hours on the dance floor. He wouldn't touch any weed or alcohol at that party. And he said, he saw that as a sign. Tupac was shooting for sobriety. He'd already gotten engaged to Kadena Jones, Quincy Jones's daughter. They already planned to have a baby, and they were planning to move out of their death row apartment and get a new place of their own.
Can you talk about Afeni Shakur? Could you talk about her trial and her connection to Assata Shakur and Zaid?
Sure. Yeah, Afeni was a brilliant teenager, and she won a New York-wide writing contest when she was still a teenager. She was just an amazing woman who, despite not going to college, when she rose to be head of chapter leader of the Harlem Black Panthers, while her husband Lumumba Shakur was still in jail, and she was bailed out to be the spokesperson for the Panther 21. And she was chosen to be bailed out first, and but when she ended up, the judge raised her bail so high that they couldn't afford to keep her out of jail, and then actually just took away all their bail of the Panther 21, put them all back in prison in what was called the longest trial in New York history at that time. She ended up reading law books while she was in prison, and defended herself in court, while a number of the other Panther 21 had paid lawyers defending them. The jury ended up saying that they thought that the reason they found all the Panther 21 not guilty in only 2 hours is because of Afeni Shakur's brilliant defense of herself. And so
John, for those who don't know, give us some kind of idea as to what were some of the charges against the 21. Give us just some kind of the charges.
Yeah, the charges were just ridiculous. It was just, basically, the New York Black Panthers, there's different estimates to their numbers, but you could say the estimates go into the thousands. There's thousands of New York Black Panthers, between Harlem Panthers and the Bronx Panthers. Now, there was other kind of offshoot groups of the Panthers in Brooklyn, too, but they actually had a different trial. Nonetheless, at that time, there was thousands of New York Panthers in the Bronx and Harlem, and they picked the top 21 leaders, people identified as the top 21 leaders, and charged them with these ridiculous charges, blowing up the botanical gardens. How do you blow up gardens? It's obviously absurd. Shooting at and planning to blow up police precincts. Just a number of absurd charges. They kept loading up these absurd charges that were, with very little evidence. But what they did have is they had... jaywalking was, for Tupac's charge at one point. It was one of
Tupac's charges.
But, what they did with the New York Black Panthers is they infiltrated them with at least 6 to 8 undercover agents. And so one of those undercover agents was a guy named Gene, I think his last name is Edwards, it leaves me now, but and so this guy was was one of the at least 6 that testified in trial. And of course, an important thing about Brother Gene, they called him, because he used to be security on the security team of Malcolm X. I think he rose to security director for Malcolm X. Was that in that trial against Afeni Shakur and the other New York Panther 21, while he was on the stand, one of the lawyers said, "Isn't it true that you helped murder Malcolm X?" And this guy here was, revealing himself as an undercover agent, testifying against the Black Panthers. And so anyway, so in that, in the trial against the Panthers, they, it was shown it was like a joke trial because it was so biased too. The judge was constantly talking to the lawyer, the prosecutor, for how to get the Panthers convicted. So it was completely corrupt, ridiculously corrupt, and even with all that corruption, they still couldn't find. The jury still didn't believe that any of the Panthers were guilty of anything. They were found not guilty of the 100+ trumped-up charges they put on them. So anyway, there's so many counts against them all. Anyway, so in that trial, though, what it came out was the fact that this brother Gene had rushed to Malcolm X right after he was shot and killed and assassinated. And the important thing about him is that it appears, all the evidence points to the fact that this undercover agent, Brother Gene, got there immediately, went to him immediately to check on the life signs to make sure that the U.S. intelligence assassination of Malcolm X was successful. And one of the important aspects of that is that it was the same thing that happened to MLK. When MLK was assassinated, undercover agent, military agent Merrill McCullough was the first to run to Martha King's body and to check on life signs to signal to the government, the government snipers that they were successful and they can stand down now. And so there was this, a similarity with that. And Merrill McCullough then got promoted to the CIA after that incident. So, are you guys still there? Because I can't hear you.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
so,
we're still here.
Yeah, sure. So, anyway,
the information is just so captivating. It's just so captivating, John.
Thanks. No, I just heard a silence, and I thought I was accidentally pushed the wrong button and muted myself.
Oh.
But so thanks. So Afeni Shakur, then after that New York 21 trial, she's asked to speak at colleges around the country, at Yale University and other Ivy League schools, and UCal, Berkeley, and all over the place. She was, paid to speak at schools all over the country. She was, considered the top celebrity of the Black Panthers at that time in 1971. And meanwhile, it was just, a month or so after getting out of that trial that she gave birth to Tupac Shakur. And so, so she was like the celebrity of Black Panthers in New York, and Tupac was, the whole family of Shakurs were revered. And then she moves in with, now Lumumba divorced Afeni while they were in prison just because while she was out of jail on bail with the old sexual revolution, she ended up getting pregnant with another Black Panther's, baby, which was Tupac. And so Lumumba divorced her, but then she was, very close with Lumumba's adopted brother, Mutulu Shakur, and she ended up moving in with him. And he was an incredible man himself. He was, he got a 4-year degree in acupuncture in Canada and used it in an incredible way to solve addictions for people in the Bronx as assistant director of Lincoln Detox, and did great work there before the police forcibly closed the place down. And but he was doing incredible work and is still an incredible activist. He was co-founding member of the Republic of New Africa. He was supposed to get out of jail, but in this past year, his sentence was supposed to be complete, and they didn't let him out of jail when he was supposed to be able to be getting out on parole. And it's really a tragedy. He should be out of jail, but hopefully we'll get him out soon.
Certainly. And Assata Shakur and Afeni Shakur were connected.
They were very close friends and close comrades. Assata Shakur was very active in the Bronx Black Panthers, and she was extremely close to Zaid Shakur. Zaid Shakur was Lumumba Shakur's biological brother, and of course Mutulu was adopted into their family. And so Zaid was the Minister of Information for the Bronx Black Panthers, and he was extremely close with Assata and Afeni, and so Assata was named as Tupac's godmother, and Los Angeles Black Panther leader Geronimo Pratt was named Tupac's godfather. And so, yes, they're all very close. And so, Tupac grew up knowing Assata as his Auntie Assata. And so, yeah, it's a very close-knit family, and it's an incredible thing that the first woman to make the FBI's most wanted terrorist list, or Homeland Security's terrorist list, whatever it is, was Assata Shakur. And it's gruesome that New Jersey put a $2 million bounty on Assata Shakur's head. It's just absolutely gruesome. It's like the Wild Wild West or something.
Oh, my goodness. That's insane. And so Zaid Shakur was with Assata and Sundiata on the New Jersey Turnpike when the shooting happened with the officer. I can't call his name right now. With the officer.
Officer Forrester, yeah.
Yes, Forrester. Absolutely, yeah. So Assata is now still in Cuba.
Right.
And as you mentioned, her bill increased under President Obama.
Yeah, the bounty. Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible.
Bounty, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. But what happened with them was that they were getting, attacked more and more, the Black Panthers, and Zaid Shakur was brokering, the West Coast, Huey Newton, the West Coast Panthers, and the East Coast Panthers, was mending fences. All these different devious tactics of the FBI's counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, were pitting these Black Panther, all the Black Panther leaders against each other with fake letters, with undercover agents spreading rumors, with all kinds of things like that. And so Zaid Shakur was making great progress in mending that split and that rift. But while doing that, he was almost killed for doing that, I argue. And he was he had to go underground to not get killed and not get, imprisoned unjustly like the others, like the other, Panther 21. And so while he's underground, Assata ended up fearing for her life because all of a sudden she was, framed for something she didn't do and was scared to death. And so she had to go underground too with Zaid, her close comrade and close friend. So that's when she changed her name to Assata Shakur from Joanne Chesmar. And so Zaid Shakur, along with Sundiata Acoli and others, helped start the Black Liberation Army out of, they were forced to do that, because of the way they were treated and hunted. And so the Black Liberation Army was a reaction to all that happened to all the other Black Panthers, like, the murder of Fred Hampton Sleep in Chicago, the Chicago Black Panther leader. And so once the Black Liberation Army started, Assata was, of course, just, part of it. Zaid was part of it. But they were just, it was just an extension of their self-defense. And so they're just traveling on the highway, and police stop them, then pretend like they stopped them for, bogus reason, and then they had their guns out immediately, the police, and they started shooting, according to Assata, started shooting out of nowhere. And Zaid Shakur just had his gun ready to defend Assata in case they did something like that, and that's what they did. So he shot back in self-defense, and they killed him, and they wounded Assata almost mortally, and one officer died in the meantime, and it wasn't Assata that killed that officer by any means, but she was blamed with killing the officer and killing her close comrade and close friend Zaid Shakur, and it was absolutely horrible, as was Sundiata Acoli, who's still in jail. So, we lost a great man in Zaid Shakur in that incident, and another great activist, and thankfully we still have Assata, and we still have Sundiata Acoli, who hopefully will get out of jail soon. Now, Lumumba Shakur's close childhood friend and close comrade, Sekou Odinga, became head of the Bronx Black Panthers, and he got out of jail within the last about 2 or 3 years, and it's great to have him out of jail. But he was part of the Black Liberation Army for a bit there too, also.
Yeah, we've had some people to be released, and some just days before they make their transition, unfortunately.
Right.
So that's it's kind of bittersweet. So they're finally released, but then they die a day later.
That is sad. But anyway, so but then we move on to, of course, Tupac and his great work, and he was having great success with politicizing, gangs across the country to stop drug dealing and turn on to activism. And I argue that that's why the CIA got involved eventually in his assassination. How close
was he in getting the Crips and the Bloods to work together?
They were in Los Angeles. They were working together. Yeah, they called peace truces in many areas of Los Angeles and throughout California, and these peace truces were spreading across the country. And even in New York, the Young Lords got inspired by the movement and convinced the Latin Kings to stop drug dealing and turn on to activism. And two New York professors documented how that happened, that when the 3,000 strong Latin Kings in New York City when all the heads of the Latin Kings were arrested, they only found one bullet shell amongst them all. No drugs, no guns, no anything. And it took them about 6 or 7 different charges to finally get the Latin King leader, Antonio King Tone Fernandez, in jail. And that was a frame-up. And so that was the largest gang in New York, the Latin Kings, and they turned into the Almighty Latin King and Queen Nation. And that took, vast amount of drugs off the streets. And that affected the top drug trafficker in the world, the CIA, and it also affected the banks and all the money they launder and turned that into so much more money by the way it works with the stocks that I described in my book from Wall Street insiders who talk about this. So it's that's the incredible effect that Tupac was having on the world in terms of stopping so much drug dealing and taking away so much money.
So by bringing the groups together, that stops the drugs, and the drugs stops the money laundering, which is what corporations and banks are doing. Is that what you think?
Yeah. And they inflate their stock values through all that money laundering, and by 20-fold, the idea that you can make that much money for 20 years. But so Tupac was really denting the wallets of these corporate owners, and and taking a lot of drugs off the street. And now I argue in my book that drugs are put on the street to what former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark told me was to sedate and divide the masses. That's why the CIA and the oligarchs put the drugs on the street. And I would also say damage the minds of the masses when you talk about LSD and ecstasy. That's what it's doing. It's damaging people's minds, and they know that. And that was part of the CIA's Operation MK Ultra, that I talked about earlier with Paul Robeson. And so, they tested dozens of different drugs on thousands of soldiers, U.S. soldiers, to see how it would affect their minds. And they saw the damage it would do, and then they used those drugs on the masses, the civil rights activists, the anti-war activists. They created the whole hippie movement, to popularize drugs and divert anti-war activists into the hippie movement to hurt their minds from doing their best organizing and activist work. And I argue that's still happening today.
And I would have to agree with you. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, if you could just briefly speak on the MK Ultra project for some people that may not have heard of that or may not be familiar with MK Ultra, because if you have not, please Google MK Ultra. But we'll be right back. You are tuned in to the Mind, Body, and Spirit radio show, and we have author John Potash with us. And you want to stay tuned so that you can hear more of what he has to share with us. We'll be right back.
Black Talk Radio, since 2008, providing new black media for the masses.
All right, and we are back here at the Mind, Body, and Spirit Radio Show, and we have with us tonight author John Potash. John is the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us. If you don't have that book, you need to be trying to order that book like right now. The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders. U.S. Intelligence Murderers Targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. So before we went to break, you spoke about MK Ultra. Could you just speak a little bit about MK Ultra?
And
Sure.
just before you speak, John, just before you speak about MK Ultra, before I turn loose Tupac, what did Biggie have to do with everything? Do you know in all of your researches? What did he have to do?
Well, Tupac, was friends with Biggie. Tupac tried to take Biggie out of this, small-time drug dealing Biggie was involved in, and help raise him as a raise his status as a rapper, because he, as part of what he was trying to do, he was trying to get, turn drug dealers into legal activities and stuff like that. And Biggie, he would have Biggie open up for him at some New York shows, Tupac did, and all. And so the whole issue with Biggie was to set up this, basically manufacture this East Coast versus West Coast rap war, and use undercover agents to do that, to use fake letters to do that, in the same way it was done between the Black Panther leaders, such as East Coast, Black Panther leader Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mother, and the other New York black leaders against the West Coast, California, Huey Newton and leadership. So that was the thing that the way they used Biggie. And then they killed Biggie after Tupac in order to divert the attention from the police officers at all levels of Death Row Records that helped orchestrate that murder of Tupac, the assassination of Tupac. And so it was really, someone who was being paid by the FBI, a guy named Kevin Hackey, who was also one of Tupac's top personal bodyguards, said that that there was FBI and ATF agents in the motorcade of Tupac's when he was murdered, and they witnessed it. And so, of course, I argue that they, helped orchestrate it. And so that's just some of the massive evidence. Now, how and why they do that? Partly because Death Row was trafficking drugs and guns and trying to end the Bloods versus Crips peace truce that Tupac and his Black Panther extended family had, helped cultivate. And so they would have, they would hire Bloods and Crips that may have also been undercover, police agents, and stage, fights in between them in Death Row Records. And they would also kill people they killed people, I guess they killed a Crip or two at a Snoop Dogg concert, and they had the Bloods kill some Crips at that concert to try to ignite the Bloods versus Crips war once again. And they were unsuccessful, but they did, have that happen, and no one got arrested. So Death Row was trying to do the opposite of what Tupac and his Black Panther family were doing with that. And so the whole Biggie situation was, to try to create this East Coast versus West Coast fake war, and then kill more rappers and blame it on the East Coast versus West Coast war.
Right.
Any other rappers that tried to get activists were targets, either for frame-ups, imprisonment, or shootings, and that was what happened with Biggie. They used that excuse as the reason they murdered Jam Master Jay, and they had it on film, and they never released that film, and who really did it, and so that's part of what it all was, yeah.
Wait a minute. Now talk a little bit about Jam Master Jay, because when Jam Master Jay, if people don't know, Jam Master Jay was Jam Master Jay of Run DMC, and right, and so Jam Master Jay are the letters of his name, something like that. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I used to love Run DMC also, but Jam Master Jay, because some of us were already kind of suspicious of his death anyway, because I believe he was killed on Halloween, and so we were already like, something not right with that. So talk a little bit about Jam Master Jay's killing. What happened with him?
Yeah, circumstances surrounding him. Well, I was in Baltimore when he died, and the Baltimore newspaper said that he had turned into an activist as he had gotten older, and he was supporting a lot of other rappers. He helped he helped 50 Cent. I think he helped even Eminem. But he was just doing great work out of his Queens recording studio, and while he was also with Run DMC, one of the first top rap groups, and so gunmen got into his recording studio. They were somehow let in, and so then there was cameras in his recording studio, recording things for security, and so gunmen just shot him in the head for no reason and left, and it was all called on film, and the police confiscate the film, just like they had the film that caught the gunman that shot Tupac in the New York recording studio lobby in November 30th of 1994. And again, in that case too, in the New York case with Tupac, the security guard offered the film to the police, and the police turned it down and closed the case. With Jam Master Jay, they took the film, but they did nothing with it. They wouldn't say what was on it. They wouldn't reveal anything about it. And that was that. And they failed to release pictures of the gunman who killed Jam Master Jay. So I'm sorry I only have less than 10 minutes, but do you want me to talk a little bit about MK Ultra and how that played a part in Tupac's life?
That would be great, and I think Feather Light may have a couple more questions.
Oh, no, I'm done. That was it. I want to hear about MK.
Okay. If we could just talk a little bit about MK Ultra and maybe Fred Hampton?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, Fred Hampton, I'll say quickly, was an undercover agent, had infiltrated the Chicago Black Panthers, and Fred Hampton was doing amazing stuff in Chicago. He was an incredible speaker. He was only 21 years old when he died. He had united a white radical group. I think they called themselves the Young Patriots. He had helped radicalize the Young Lords and helped turn them from a street gang to the top Puerto Rican activist group in the country. He had started politicizing the Blackstone Rangers, who changed their name to the Black Peace Stone Nation, to unite with the Black Panthers. He was just an amazing organizer, amazing speaker, great activist. And so they had this undercover agent infiltrate his group, try to sabotage his work at uniting the different gangs with the Panthers, and then drugged him the night that his house was raided, put a drug in his drink, so that when police started shooting up his house and shot hundreds, if not 1,000 bullets into his home, they, killing Mark Clark, who was the Southern Illinois Panther leader, and wounding many other Black Panthers that were in his home that night. He didn't even wake up from his bed, and they came to his bedroom and shot him in his bed, bloodied up his bed, and then dragged him out of the bed to pretend like he wasn't unconscious in his bed and hadn't been drugged. It's just absolutely awful. And again, we lose another incredible activist leader in Fred Hampton, and it's absolutely brilliant. And thankfully, we have his son, Fred Hampton Jr., who I consider a friend and comrade. I've talked with Fred Hampton Jr. at public events a few times now, and got to hang out with him in Chicago a bit. He's just an incredible speaker, incredible activist himself, and he's head of a group he started called the Prisoners of Conscience Committee. He used to be head of the Uhuru movement, the national, great national activist group. They framed him and had him in jail for a number of years, about 7 or 8 years. But when he got out, he thankfully he's been able to stay out of jail for a long time now and do great work with the Prisoners of Conscience Committee, which is a great national activist group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's doing some awesome work, just like his father.
Yeah.
And his mother was pregnant with him.
Right,
when
his
the
dad
house
was killed.
raided.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, well, John, thank you so very much, and we will certainly have to have you back because we didn't get to Mumia, we didn't get to John Lennon, Kurt Cobain,
Well, we have
Bob Marley.
3 minutes for MK Ultra, don't we?
Okay, yeah, I'll give you a quick just overview about MK Ultra, and in terms of but I'll just say real quick that so MK Ultra was started in the early 1950s, and it was an umbrella program that had some 150 plus sub-projects, and it was basically the promotion of drugs in an undercover way in order to kind of quell the activism that was rising up with the civil rights movement in the 1950s into the 1960s, of course, and then to target both civil rights civil rights activists as well as anti-war activists, but particularly targeting the anti-war activists with the drugs. And all drugs were tested and then utilized under MK Ultra, and but LSD was probably the top drug utilized under MK Ultra. But they used it when a number of musicians, and they manipulated a number of musicians such as John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, and Kurt Cobain and Tupac, sadly enough, to get involved in these drugs and promote these drugs. But then when they sobered up and got more into activism, these musicians were done away with because they didn't want them promoting sobriety. And that's really, in a nutshell, what MK Ultra was.
And you can YouTube so many videos about MK Ultra projects. It is just horrifying, absolutely horrifying. All the psych programs, and oh my God, it's just it's horrible.
It's major psychological warfare against us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, and we look forward to having you back because we really got to dig more into your research and unpack some of your topics in the books and these endnotes. My goodness, people, please. This is a book to definitely read. Thank you, John.
It really is.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Be well, be
Both of his
safe.
books.
Well, you do the same. Thank you.
All right.
We'll
Peace.
talk
Have a
again
good day.
soon. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Peace. And that was John Potash. And I'll tell you, like I said, I love Tupac. And just to be enlightened more about his life is worth reading this book. The one Tupac, FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Other Black Leaders. So, goodness gracious. What you think about that? Featherlight and Delta. I think Delta joined us. Hey, Delta, what's happening, Delta?
Hey, how everybody doing tonight?
Namaste, Delta.
Yeah, Delta's in
A wealth of information.
Oh, my God. Yeah, well, Delta tuned in kind of on the end, so she missed a lot of his information. But oh my God, you, Delta, and anyone else can always download this episode. You can replay it by going on to Black Talk Media Network. And when you go onto Black Talk Media Network page, you can listen to not only this show, but other shows. And you can click on to the BTR and join the Black Social Media Experience. It's the Black Facebook. It's being called the Black Facebook. You can connect with like minds. And also you can donate. And we always want to donate to each other so that we can help each other. But you definitely want to donate to Black media. Everybody's complaining about Bill O'Reilly and what he said and what he did. You know these people sleazy anyway. So forget about that media. They're there to critique. You have the Black media, us, we.
Exactly. Stop complaining and do what needs to be done to correct.
Yeah. We
have an alternative. This is it.
This is an alternative. This is an alternative, and you should be following Black Talk Media Network on YouTube as well. Then that way you'll receive the notifications of different episodes. Scotty Reed often posts BTR news, so you can get your Black news update. Well, not just Black news, but news update from a Black perspective.
The real news.
Just accurate. I don't even have to say from a Black perspective, but just a different insight. Let me say it like that. A different view.
Yes.
How about
because
that?
You know what's wrong with the other view.
Well, what I was saying, the Black news is really telling it basically true for the Black folks, because really the white media is not going to really tell the truth for us.
Well, they're not telling the truth for anybody that's really listening. Really. You mean about us. Really. We complain about the media, how it's wrong and how it's corrupt and this and that. But why don't we just support what we know is right, what we know is moving in the direction that we want to move in?
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. Cut out with the complaining and take some action.
And take some action. Yeah, take some action. Donate to. There's so many different independent media sources, and some of them are worth following and some of them are not. But I certainly can say that here at Black Talk Media Network, you can follow Black Talk Media Network because you have people that are going to research information and give you that information in a timely manner. So I love tuning in, listening to what some of these different radio hosts have to share with us. Speaking of sharing, what are we sharing next, Featherlight?
Well, we are sharing the quote of the week.
Okay.
The quote of the week is, you can't teach anyone anything. They have to accept it.
They have to accept
anyone anything.
Okay, you can't teach anyone anything. They have to accept. Yeah, okay. I get that.
Okay, so
I get that. They have to be receptive.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You know, when you look up the meaning of teach, it's so vague. It will actually use the word to describe the word, to teach someone. Actually, it should be a guide. It should be a guide, because a person could say, I taught him how to tie his shoes. But actually, the person was observing how they were doing it. They locked that in their mind, and they repeated what they thought. It made sense to them, and they accepted that process. If someone is trying to teach you, say, a whack way of doing math, and your mind is not accepting, it doesn't make any sense, then they're not teaching you. You're not going to accept that. And people will say things like, I tried to teach him, but he just didn't get it. He would not accept the way you were bringing it to him. You know, sometimes people will get upset with people who they say are, quote unquote, unconscious, and they will say, oh, they just don't get it. They're not accepting what you are saying.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk, but until they're ready to accept it, then they won't get it.
That's true. And you can't force information on people. I always say that.
No.
Don't try to force people to accept anything.
they're not ready or willing, then move on. You've done what you were supposed to do. You brought it. The only thing you could do is bring it to you. And speaking of teaching, the teachers of today with our children, they're no longer what we used to call teach anyways, mostly putting out information so the children can take it in and regurgitate it, just repeat back what they heard. And originally, the guides were to bring out what we already had in us, right?
To educe, bring it out, bring forth.
Exactly. So that is my quote for today, for the week.
All right. Love your quote. Any more thoughts on your quote? And you can press *66 if you would like to join in on this conversation and share some thoughts on what John Potash shared with us. If you have some comments, please share those thoughts with us. You can call in, or you can just press star if you're on the line, and we can open up your mic. What else do we have, Featherlight?
Well, we have our mind, body, and spirit message, which is entitled Bullies. Bullies.
Bullies.
Are you one? Yeah, you listening audience, are you a bully? So,
Delta, are you a bully? Are you a bully, Delta?
What did you say?
Are you a bully? We're asking, are you a bully?
It's like my phone muzzling. I said again. I'm sorry, y'all. My phone kind of muzzling.
Oh, okay. Well, we're talking about this piece we're getting ready to share. It's called Are You a Bully? And so I was just really being facetious, asking you, are you a bully? I know you're not a bully.
Well,
I don't think. Are you a bully? You might be. That's why I'm asking. Never assume.
I don't want to say I'm a bully, but I believe that if I want to do something, I'll bully my way through, probably.
I can kind of see that a little bit, Delta.
I can too. Well, some of the synonyms for bully is oppress, dominate. It sounds like a country to me. Tyrannize, browbeat. Sounds like somebody else to me.
Sounds like
bully.
my president to me.
Bullies are people or groups of people who are insecure within themselves, do not like who they are, and speak out / target others who may be perceived or perpetuated by society as different in some way, and often remind them of their own real or imagined shortcomings. Bullies draw attention away from their own failures in their mind and directs them towards others using a variety of tactics, including public mockery and embarrassment, like removing their clothes in public, like the unwarranted strip searches by law enforcement that we see. Sometimes it's done as pranks by teenagers. Verbal and physical abuse, including those from a spouse, which often result in low self-worth. Self-imposed isolation, depression to their victims, and sometimes even loss of life, either directly or indirectly. Bullies are not restricted to the classroom, however. Those are the regular bullies. There are also quiet, less popular bullies that we want to talk about. The bullies, these are the ones who strictly use hurtful verbal attacks to another who can't defend themselves. They're less empowered. They say things like, now that was stupid. Why did you do that? You sure screwed that up. You know better, idiot. You're getting fat. Your nose is too wide. You need to lose some weight. You'll never get it right. You always pick the wrong guy. You should have known better than that. You always attract the wrong crazy women. How could you be so stupid, so careless, so irresponsible? You're always losing things. You can't sing the win for losing. Do any of these phrases sound somewhat familiar to your subconscious? Has your inner child, that little person inside of you, ever heard any of this directed to yourself? Think about it. Now, would you, as a honest, good, law-abiding, good person, repeatedly say these words to a defenseless child, knowing that the long-term damage it would cause, like low self-esteem, unworthiness, fear of failure, shame? Could you be so harsh to a child? What about your inner child? Do you abuse and bully your inner child? Black Rose.
All right. Do you abuse and bully your inner child? All right. So to begin with, the inner child is real, not literally nor physically, but figuratively, metaphorically real. And it is powerful. Indeed, most mental disorders and destructive behavior patterns are more or less related to this unconscious part of ourselves. Adult angry outbursts are like childlike temper tantrums. Holding a grudge is like a child sulking. They didn't get their way and they want you to know how upset they still are, instead of moving on, as an adult should. That's the inner child lashing out from unresolved issues, abandonment, guilt, shame, neglect, failure, etc. We were all once children and still have that child dwelling within us, but most adults are quite unaware of it. And this lack of conscious relatedness to our own inner child is precisely where so many behavioral, emotional, and relationship difficulties stem from. That is so true. That's why I always say, look, go see a therapist, go talk to somebody.
Nothing to be ashamed of.
If you don't have a good friend that you can sit and talk to and have them counsel. But yeah, go to a therapist. Okay. All right.
The fact is that the majority of so-called adults are not truly adults at all. We all get older. Anyone with any luck can do that. But psychologically speaking, this is not adulthood. True adulthood hinges on acknowledging, accepting, taking responsibility for loving and parenting one's own inner child. For most adults, this never happens. Instead, their inner child has been denied, neglected, disparaged, abandoned, or rejected. We're told by society to grow up, put childish things aside. I still say. To become adults, we've been taught that our inner child, representing our childlike capacity for innocence, and wonder, and awe, and joy, and sensitivity, and playfulness, all these things, we're taught that they need to be stifled and quarantined, even just killed, just wiped out altogether. We can't feel those things. And the inner child comprises and potentiates these positive qualities within us. That's the good thing about being natural. Just still have a little playfulness about yourself. Still laugh. Still have that awe, and still be sensitive about things. It also holds our accumulated childhood hurt, our traumas, our fears, and our angers, this little child within us. Grown-ups are convinced that they have successfully outgrown and left this child and this emotional baggage long behind. But au contraire, this is far from the truth. There's a quote that says, "So like a forgotten fire, a childhood can always flare up again within us." And we've seen this happen, but we don't know that person's inner child, they just like flare up, just all of a sudden, this angry outburst. You're like, what the hell? Where did that come from? That's that inner child, that's suppressed emotions that need to be dealt with, or you're upset because your partner, your lover, your husband took an extra 30 minutes in getting home, and you're wanting to stop and visiting with this supposedly lover. That jealousy rising up in you. Something happened. Maybe you were abandoned, and you're afraid that you're going to be abandoned. These are things that need to be addressed. So embrace the comfort of your inner child, first of all, and let them know that they can trust you to come out and heal. And parents are not necessarily bad. They're just wounded. So embrace your inner child and don't ignore him or her. Just like a needy child, they will keep acting out until you do. Show love to your inner child the way you want to be shown love. If you were their child, praise them for a change. Praise them.
Namaste.
Now, I have references. This is not something I just pulled out of my head. Healing the Child Within on mindful.org, Body and Mind. Inner Child Work by Lorna Wolf on Soul Work. There's a lot of information out there about the inner child. We just don't talk about it, but we do need to pay attention to our inner child. Love Your Inner Child, Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And here's the funny one. This person obviously can really relate. The title of her book is called Dear Stupid, Letters to My Wounded Child by Sandra Bridget.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that book before. I haven't read that, but Letters to My Wounded Child. Now that would be a good exercise, writing letters to your inner or wounded child. So,
yes, I did that. I one day I will share it once I was made aware that I was a bully, because I had an intense childhood, so I'm an advocate for children. So the thought of a bully is like, oh, bully's bad. And then when I found out that I was a bully, to my inner child, that hurt me so badly. It really, really did. So even now when I think, when I lose things, I'll say, now how can I find it? It's around here somewhere. I'm going to find it, rather than vanish and beat up on myself about always losing things. I don't do that anymore. I'll just be calm, and I'll say, I'm going to find it. And I'll find it.
Interesting. Delta, what do you think? Do you have any, inner child, I guess, do you ever talk to your inner child, or do you feel like you know your inner child, or do you still have your inner child, or what?
Are you aware of your inner child?
Well, yes, I do. There's some things I can kind of go back in my childhood and think of a lot of things that was as a kid when I was coming up. Think about, for instance, I would say, how I used to be, back then we had little bottles. We didn't have jars. We had the Coca-Cola bottles, that inner child within. It's a lot of things I can think about. And then, how we was, the candy, getting candy. When I was a child, we didn't get a lot of candy.
But Delta Cougar, do you talk to your inner child? Not the kind of things that you used to do when you were a child, but do you talk to your inner child now? What kind of things do you say now?
Well, I would probably say, girl, when you was little, You used to run and you used to go down the dirt road. You didn't hang out, like with other kids. I wish when I was a child I could go out and hang with other kids. I couldn't go out and hang with other kids. I wish that, and that's probably why I'm so outgoing now, because when I was a child I couldn't do it.
But what do you say?
I would say I would probably tell myself I wish I could have did this more when I was a child. Could I maybe went out more, but I didn't.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people probably feel like that. They didn't get a chance to really fully experience their childhood. And that's been written about Michael Jackson. Not being able to experience his childhood. And when you think about a lot of children that were actually working when they were supposed to be enjoying their childhood. Well, I'm not going to say supposed to have
really
been.
Never had a childhood almost.
How do you feel about that now? How do you think that affects you now, Jessica? The fact that your childhood was sort of robbed, really.
It makes you sad. It makes you long for the things that you didn't have when you was a child. You wish you'd had to be able to go out more and mingle with other kids, maybe to be able to go out and be with your parents, and maybe your parents to try to do something with you and they was not able to, and it just makes you think about it. It makes me think about that when I was a kid, I didn't have a relationship with my father like I should. When I talk to myself sometimes, I wish as a little girl that me and my father could have been more closer. Me and my mother was closer, but me and my father wasn't. I think about that a lot.
Did you ever grow close to your father?
Say that again. Sure, I didn't hear you.
Did you ever grow close to your father in your adult years?
Well, a little bit. I think I respected him more as I got older. I think a lot of things he did when he didn't know any better, he was doing it because I guess that's the way he was raised. And and I remember, and I was telling my husband, this may sound crazy, but I was just telling my husband the other night, I love to eat peanuts. I love peanuts. And I told Papa the other night, I said, Larry, this is one of the good memories I have of my father. His family members grew peanuts, and he used to bring us peanuts all the time when we were kids, and we used to eat a lot of peanuts, and then we used to drink coffee when we were kids. Those are like the memories I have, but just him, I guess that's his way of showing affection to us,
Yeah, because people show affection in different ways, especially parents.
Right. And we have to realize that our parents, they are going on their experiences that they had as children, what they saw as parents, as children, what they saw in their parents. And they're really, it's hard to say they're bad parents. They're parents who've been wounded, parents who may have been molested, abandoned, or what have you. And this comes out on the children. Of course, the children are blaming the parents. I know I blamed my mother for years for abandoning us when I was 12, and I just thought that was just so harsh. I was 12 and my sister was 13, to leave two girls. And it was a long, long time before I got over that. And when I finally broke down and cried, in my 30s, and just kind of told her how I felt, she said she did the best she could do. She only did what she knew what she could do. And it makes sense. We do we do now things that we know based on our experience. I did the best I could. I worked with what I had. We are where we are because we worked with what we had. We made the decisions based on what we knew. I remember also my father was, I thought of him as being a very mean, speaking of your father, Delta Cooper, he was very mean. But then I also thought about the good times when the ice cream man would come around the neighborhood, and he would just go in his pocket, even though rent was due, and buy all the kids ice cream. And I would be so proud. I was like, my dad did that. Yeah, that's my dad, So sometimes we do have to reach back, and just grab some kind of good and mix it in to make us feel better, and then just realize, it's the best they could with what they had.
Yeah, I guess, you're right. I guess when I go off the scene, I guess my kids are going to see the same thing. And I was thinking about what your mother just said just now, that, I was thinking about my grandkids now, like I'm raising my grandkids, and I have a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the mother, she brought them to me, and she told me, she said, I need you to help me. She said, I'm not equipped right now. I'm not equipped mentally, and I need you to step in until I get myself together. And so I guess a lot of the thing I was thinking about what your mother just said, a lot of times it's what's going on in a person and a parent's life. She's saying that it's not that she don't want her kids. She knows that she's not equipped and able mentally to take care of her kids right now. And so
she loves them enough to put them in the hands of someone who can, right?
That is correct, yes.
Which is best.
So and that one, she probably meant well, but, she done the best she could. That's all.
At least she was able to recognize that she did need some assistance, because I tell you, I know I would need some assistance if I were trying to raise some children, especially if you are a single parent raising children. I think you really need some assistance. You need some assistance.
It's hard wearing two hats.
It's tough enough for two parents, it seems. All right. Okay, then. So,
and I was going to say, I don't think a lot of, sometimes, like, people, I don't think some people can grow up to be bullies. I think some people, as young kids, they want to be a leader. They want to be a leader, and they'll set themselves more over other kids. And I don't think some of them don't really mean to be a bully, but, like some of them wants to be the leader of the group, and they assert their authority to be the leader. So do you really call that one a bully?
I didn't hear your last sentence, Delta.
I didn't either.
I was saying, like, some kids grow up and in a group, they the leader of the group, and they assert their authority over the other kids to be that leader. So do you think that's being a bully? Or they more want to be the leader of the group?
I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that those people need a leader. And that person has observed that and observed that need and acknowledged that and accepted a role to step in and take the lead. So I wouldn't necessarily say that person is a bully, because me, myself, being a natural leader, what I always do if I'm in a group, I sit back so that I won't be overpowering, because I know I can be dominating and overpowering and very controlling. So I try to step back in situations and allow somebody else, or see what everybody else has on the table for the solution. And if it sounds like it's workable, feasible, doable, makes sense, then I can flow with it. But if I don't see that working, I see some flaws or something, then I definitely step in. And that's just how I naturally am. I step in and take control of situations. And, it may be perceived as bullying in some instances.
No, I don't think that's bullying. Bullying is as I mentioned before, it's oppressing the person, making a mockery of a person, belittling a person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same way. I can lead. I can naturally lead, or if I feel that someone else is better equipped, I'm okay with that. I can sit back, but I'm more of an organizer and sort of like a peacekeeper. And if I see that there's not a leader in the group, then I know how to organize the people in a way to say, oh, she can do it. Let's go to her. And then I'll say, now, what do you have to say? What do you have to say? And then I can lead like that. I lead in a more of a subtle way. But I don't think being a leader has anything to do with being a bully. It's how you are a leader.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good words.
Well, I would think almost like I'm more of an organizer. I believe I can get it done, and I want it done a certain way. And then I'll sit back and I'll be quiet for a minute. But then after a while, if you keep on not doing it the way I want it, and I don't think it's kind of right, that's when I step up in a certain amount of authority. And,
I certainly do that. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell are you doing? You're not going to do that. That don't even make any sense. And then I come in with my plan. This is how we getting ready to do this. This is how this is getting ready to go down right now. I'm like Olivia Pope. You do this, you do. Delegate, and more delegation. Shoot,
and then my tactic is now if we do it this way, this is how it will come out. If we do it this way, because I'm a fast thinker, this is how it will come out. And if we do it this way, this is how it will come out. Which way you want to do? That's what I thought, my way. Okay, this is the way we're going. So we all have different tactics.
Yeah. So.
And I think some people need to be led.
Oh yes.
Yes, definitely. Some people want to be led.
Yeah. And a good leader is a good follower also, is what I've heard.
Yes. If someone else has a better idea than yours, then you have to be willing to accept it and say, okay, let's go with that. Not argue, not get the ego trip.
You have to know what the people want and need. And then you organize them around certain issues and they're their issues, and you figure out how to organize them based on their talents and skills and things like that. But it's just I think some people are just great leaders and some people are great followers, and they can get things done. So that's how organizations thrive. All right, so we have about 10 more minutes. You want to go to Love the Body?
Yes, and I Love the Body. We talked about the healing of the inner child. We talked about how the inner child is neglected. So we wanted to give you 7 tips on how you can heal your inner child and acknowledge your inner child, because I truly believe that a lot of us are not aware of the inner child. And the first thing you have to do, just like with mistakes or learning, you have to just be aware. So first step, be aware. Number 1. You want to share number 1?
Okay. I love you.
Say it again.
I love you. I love you. As children, a lot of us believed that we needed to accomplish goals, get good grades, make the team, fill our older siblings' footsteps to be lovable. We may not have had parents who told us we deserved love, no matter what we achieved. Some of us may have had parents who considered showing love and tenderness to be a sign of weakness, but we can tell ourselves that we are lovable now. Say it whenever you see yourself in the mirror. Say it in any random moments. Love is the key to healing, so give it to yourself.
I hear you. Oftentimes when we feel hurt, we push down our feelings and try to act strong. For a lot of us, this stems from childhood, when we frequently heard, quit your crying or I'll give you something to cry about. But those feelings just don't go away. They fester inside of us, affecting the choices we make as adults until we make the conscious effort to hear them. The wounded child asks for care and love, but we do the opposite. We run away because we're afraid of suffering. The block of pain and sorrow in us feels overwhelming. Even if we have time, we don't come home to ourselves. We try to keep ourselves constantly entertained, watching television or movies, socializing or using alcohol or drugs because we don't want to experience that suffering all over again. Instead of suppressing the voice of your inner child, say, I hear you. We'll work through it. It's going to be okay.
Aww. Number 3, you didn't deserve this. As children, many of us assumed that we deserved to be abused, shamed, or abandoned. We told ourselves that we were a bad kid, that we did something wrong. But that's simply not true. In many cases, the people who wounded us simply didn't know any other way. Perhaps my mom was beaten as a child, so it was the only way she knew how to parent her daughter. Maybe my father was molested. Hurt people hurt people. A child is innocent and pure. A child does not deserve to be abused, shamed, or abandoned. It's not the fault. It's not the child's fault. And though we may not have had the capacity to understand this then, now as adults we do.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I've always been an overcomer.
You know, I had to do it. I'm sorry. I had to do it. Sorry. I ain't sorry.
You are sorry.
I am sorry.
I've always been an overachiever. I consider slowing down a sign of weakness. Not too long ago, I was constantly stressed about not doing enough. I couldn't enjoy time with my kids because I'd be thinking about work. One day, it dawned on me that since I was a child, I'd been pushing myself too hard. I never cut myself any slack. I would criticize myself if I simply wanted to sit down and rest. So I told my inner child I was sorry. She didn't deserve to be pushed so hard, and I don't deserve it now as an adult either. I've since allowed myself a lot more downtime, and my relationships with my loved ones have improved as a result.
Number 5, I forgive you. One of the quickest ways to destroy ourselves is to hold on to shame and regret. The first night my mom returned home when I was 14, she asked to sleep with me. When we only had 2 beds at the time, one for me and one for my dad. I couldn't fall asleep and I kept rolling around. Then all of a sudden, my mom blurted out, "Stop moving, you asshole." The next day, I put a sign on my door that read, "No unauthorized entry," to prevent her from coming in. My mom left again. Then a few days after, my dad told me that they were getting a divorce after being separated for 8 years. I thought it was my fault. Why did I have to roll around and so childishly put up a sign? But now I know that their divorce wasn't my fault, and I forgive myself for anything I could have done better. I was only a child, and like everyone, I was and am human and imperfect.
Thank you. Thank your inner child for never giving up, for getting through the tough moments in life together with strength and perseverance. Your inner child doesn't deserve your judgment. He or she deserves your gratitude and respect.
Last one. You did your best. You did your best. And your best is all you can do. As a child, I always tried to outperform, to overachieve, to meet someone else's standard, to be perfect. That's a quote. I was always demanding and cruel to myself. And no matter how well I did, I never felt it was good enough. But I did the best I could at the time, and you did too. We're still doing the best we can, and we deserve credit for that.
When we let go of perfection, the failure of failure recedes, goes away. Then we can allow ourselves to experiment and see how things unfold. Healing starts from acknowledging, accepting, and beginning the ongoing process of reparenting your inner child. So say something good to yourself. Say one of those 7 things to yourself. Try to say it every day.
Namaste.
Now let's everybody take a deep breath. Breathe from your belly. Put your hand from your belly. Take a deep breath in. Your stomach goes out like a balloon. Exhale. Inhale from the forward. Deep breath. Hold it. Exhale. Shake your shoulders. Smile. And say you are beautiful, you are marvelous, you are fantastic, you are splendid, whatever wonderful thing you want to say to yourself. Because your inner child is listening. Namaste.
I'm fabulous. Namaste. I am love. And I am. That's a powerful statement there. So whatever your I am is,
I am stupendous.
All right, then. You better work, girl. Work. All right, then. Delta,
good night, everybody. Namaste.
Delta,
namaste.
What are you, Delta?
I didn't hear you say anything, Delta. What did you say to yourself?
I said namaste. I love y'all.
Okay,
do you
Delta,
love you?
Yeah. I love myself. I have to calm myself down. I have to pull myself down sometimes.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank
you, Delta. Namaste.
Namaste.
Next week.